The Social Media Lab is powered by Agorapulse.
Welcome to the Social Media Lab, busting the myths, rumors, and stories of the social media marketing ecosystem with science. Today, we're reviewing an experiment run by the Social Media Hat to find out if reposting evergreen content to Facebook is still a viable strategy. Many of us are starting to have our doubts.
I wanted to know whether sharing the same post over and over again might actually be hurting my brand, or if not, what the actual benefits are. That's something I couldn't determine without an elaborate experiment.
Mike Alton from the Social Media Hat joins us for today's Social Media Lab. So, speaking of Facebook organic reach, it's like seems to be the only thing people are talking about these days. Scott, what are we testing today?
Yeah, today we're going to take a look at evergreen content on Facebook. And this is a test that was done by Mike Alton of Social Media Hat. And today's experiment's a little bit different than usual because typically we're testing a larger range of data, myself or Jason is. So today, analyzing Mike's data, who's someone outside of the company, is going to be a little bit different and change things up for us.
Yeah. Now, Mike's an award-winning author and consultant on social media marketing, and he recently decided to test his Facebook evergreen content strategy.
For years, myself and others have been doing and preaching this idea that you need to keep sharing your evergreen content over and over again. In theory, each time a particular post is shared again, you have the opportunity to reach people who weren't following that particular social profile earlier, or who simply may have missed that post the first time around, or the second time, or the third time. Well, you get the idea. But recently, I'd begun to wonder whether that was true, or if we were just fooling ourselves. I wanted to know whether sharing the same post over and over again might actually be hurting my brand, or if not, what the actual benefits are. And that's something I couldn't determine without an elaborate experiment.
That was Mike Alton, the founder of the Social Media Hat himself, on why he decided to run this experiment. Now, Mike had a hypothesis that evergreen content would see a decrease in reach and engagement the more often it's posted to Facebook.
My original hypothesis, perhaps even fear, was that the same post, after repeated sharing, would get abysmal reach and engagement. In fact, I was afraid that fans, and even Facebook, might start to complain. But for the sake of science, I was willing to accept the mission and assume those risks.
Fair enough. How did he test that?
So basically what Mike did is he posted 3 times per day to his page for 28 days. And he cycled the same 12 posts over and over again throughout those 28 days.
Okay, which would mean each post gets published about 7 times.
Yeah, 7 times over that 28 period.
Now, this was all done on one Facebook page, and all 12 of these posts were text with links and a link preview.
Yeah, and for Mike, with an online business similar to Agorapulse and a lot of people who listen to this podcast, sending traffic to his website is crucial because it's the only way he gets business and it's the only way that he can make money.
All right, so Mike posted 3 times a day for 28 days using the same 12 posts. And that meant each of these 12 evergreen posts were published 7 times over that 28-day period, fully expecting to see a decline in reach and engagement. Is that what happened?
Maybe.
Maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Because first, let's talk about how we're measuring this. So if you'll remember, each evergreen post cycled through
7 times.
Yeah, 7 times. And we tracked each post's performance from its first publishing to its 7th time.
Okay. And
reach did decline actually on every post, but engagement actually rose.
wow, we could read a lot into that. But first, how significant were the rises and the falls in reach?
I won't get into all the numbers and the details here in the podcast. You can go see that for yourself on the post about the evergreen content. and how the performance went from start to finish. We broke it down looking at the reach of the first post compared to the last time he posted it and put it into percentage. And you can see that at agorapulse.com/social media lab. But we kind of want to look at two of the most extreme cases here. One of these 12 posts actually saw a 66% decline in reach from its first publishing to its seventh.
Yikes.
Yeah, and another of the 12 posts only saw a 13% decline in reach from its first to its seventh.
Okay. Okay. I'm speculating already.
Yeah, and what I want to do is I want to track one specific post here that shows some interesting results. The post's reach actually went up and went up substantially the second time it was published, and then it went up substantially again the third time it was published. So it kind of went up and down.
Okay.
And then it dipped a little the fourth and fifth time it was published, but the sixth time it was published, reach shot back up. In fact, this post's second highest reach score occurred upon the sixth publishing. And even when this post dipped in reach, it never dropped below the amount of reach it got on the first time it published.
Okay, let me wrap my head around this for a minute. This post was published 7 times over a 28-day period, and it had its highs and its lows, but it never reached fewer people than its first publishing, even the 7th time it was published.
Yeah, it was an interesting ebb and flow because the second, third, and sixth times it published were actually higher reach.
Now, that didn't happen with every post that we're tracking here.
No, it didn't. And some of the posts, in fact, the reach went down by the seventh publishing. But like the post we just mentioned, there were highs and lows the entire time. It was like it was constantly this up and down. And one more thing about the post that we were tracking and talking about, its third publishing gained the most engagement, ironically.
So this post that was published 7 times got not only the most reach, but it also got the most engagement and the most link clicks the third time it was published.
Yeah, that's correct. And it was kind of odd to see it pan out that way.
So, according to what we've seen here, evergreen content is not dead.
Not according to the data that Mike gathered, no.
I assumed that by the end of the test, I'd be down to almost no one seeing my posts, and certainly no one clicking on or engaging with the posts. And yet, after the test was concluded, I was shocked to discover that so many of those repeat posts actually did quite well, and that sharing them multiple times proved to be valuable.
That was Mike Alton again on the results of his experiment.
Based on what we discovered, I definitely think that sharing evergreen content multiple times is a good idea. Clearly, each new share presents new opportunities for fans to see your content and engage with your brand.
Okay, well, now typically we would run a much larger data set using a variety of Facebook business pages over a longer period of time. But there's so much to pull from this little experiment. And I'll just start off here with maybe don't use link posts so much.
Yeah, and back to the smaller data set, I do think it's interesting to do tests like this. We did one here recently. Our last podcast actually talked about an emoji test we did with Quintly. Quintly looked at, I don't know, was it 15,000 posts or something, maybe even larger than that. I don't remember.
No, it's
And we
5.5 million, I think.
Yeah, five. Yeah, I was way off. Uh, it was a huge data set, and so we took it to a smaller degree and then looked at just a couple of pages to kind of see if it was more realistic. And I think this is kind of the same sort of deal here, looking at Mike's stuff, where instead of looking at this huge, elephant, we looked at a tiny little mouse in the room and saw what they were doing, which is easier to apply to people. So I think that was kind of interesting. And as far as not posting links so much, I mean, typically links are the worst performers when it comes to Facebook reach as of recording this today. And as we know, the way the links are automatically formatted with the image and now the title featured in, the description, that signals to Facebook that you're trying to get people to leave Facebook and take people off of their platform, which they want you to stay there and engage and have a conversation. So instead, you might consider publishing images or videos and include those links in the description or even in the comments.
Yeah, and this is one of those things that really makes me appreciate this little experiment even more. We're measuring some pretty cool performance trends that are actually bucking what's the common knowledge right now. And we're doing it on the worst performing type of content. I mean, imagine what we'd see if we were looking at photo posts with links as opposed to just link posts.
Yeah, and when you say worst performing, let's make sure we know it's the worst performing reach. That the link clicks are phenomenal and important. But yeah, and so I mean, it's something like looking at what you're saying, looking at links and photos. That's a pretty cool experiment. We ought to take a look at.
Totally. Now, what about repeating content as often as we did in this experiment? 7 times in 28 days?
Um, that's not too bad, considering what we've seen. Mike recommends about a month between repeated posts. I would recommend maybe a little bit more space between those repeats, but it is probably a lot.
Yeah, we know from our last experiment with Jeff Bullis that he'll repeat a tweet 7 times per month successfully. But Twitter is a really different platform, and Jeff has such a huge audience.
Yeah, that's the key. Is it really depends on the size of audience you have and where you're posting it to. I would say on average, put at least a month gap in between your evergreen content on Facebook. If you do it too often, that's going to signal something to Facebook that you've posted this before. Plus, your audience has already seen it and they may not want to engage with it.
Yeah, and that parallels perfectly with Mike's final thoughts and conclusions on his experiment.
The strategy of posting evergreen content cannot be isolated. In order for brands to be successful using Facebook, every post needs to be interesting and engaging to visitors. That means a page must have varied content with images and videos and opportunities for fans to participate through discussion. Sharing evergreen content repeatedly is a great idea, but it should be used as a supplement for a more diverse schedule of activity.
All right, so, despite what we're hearing all over the ecosystem right now, evergreen content, evergreen organic content, it's not dead. Not yet. It's still working.
Yeah, it's still working, and I think it's important to if you're a marketer and you're writing blogs, and you're someone like us who's got hundreds of blogs, you've got to get that content out there more than once because people aren't going to see it the first time that you put it out there. So make sure though you have a schedule set up that has it recycling with a space in between it. That way you don't overrun it, and then maybe even go in and change out the text portion of that update with the same link over time. That way it's not exactly the same every time it comes out.
All right. I want to thank Mike Alton for this experiment. Do you have an experiment you'd like the Social Media Lab to run for you? Give us a shout out on the Agora Pulse Facebook page. We look forward to hearing from you.